Kyle Carter sat in the back of the rattling survey rover, watching the dusty landscape pass by through the thick window. He had been on Varan 6 for only a week, but already the strange planet felt like a dream. Red rocks stretched out in all directions, broken by jagged cliffs and strange glowing plants. The rest of the crew joked often, but Kyle stayed quiet. He was a new recruit, a quiet engineer who liked machines more than people. The team stopped near a rocky slope. Their task was simple: collect rock samples, scan the surface, and return to base. Kyle walked a little farther than the others. He liked to work alone. He knelt by a crack in the ground and took out his scanner. The device beeped softly. Then the ground shook. It started as a small tremor, but within seconds it became a strong quake. Rocks tumbled. Kyle lost his balance and rolled down the slope. He tried to grab onto something, but there was nothing but dust and stone. He fell hard and hit his head. When he opened his eyes, everything was quiet. He groaned and sat up. Slowly, pain throbbed in his leg. He looked around. The slope above him had collapsed. There was no way back up. He reached for his comm device, but it was cracked. Dead. Kyle checked his backpack. He had some tools, water, and a small med kit. He tried to stand, but his leg buckled. He sat back down, breathing hard. He was trapped as night fell. The temperature dropped quickly. Kyle used part of his jacket to wrap his leg. He lit a small emergency flare for warmth and light. He had to think. He had to survive until the others found him. But as the hours passed, he began to lose hope. Then he heard footsteps, not heavy boots, lighter, quieter. He looked toward the sound and saw a figure coming from the shadows between two rocks. It was not human. She was tall and slim, with pale cyan skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Her eyes were large and violet. Her hair was soft and floated slightly, as if moved by a breeze that wasn't there. She wore dark clothes made from smooth, flowing material. A strange symbol was etched on her chest. Kyle froze. The alien woman stopped a few steps away and tilted her head. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. He tried to speak, but his voice came out weak. Who are you? She blinked slowly, then stepped closer. In a calm, soft voice, she said, "You are hurt." He stared at her in shock. Her words were broken but clear. She knelt beside him and opened a small pouch on her belt. Inside were strange, glowing leaves. She crushed them gently and spread the paste on his leg. It felt cold, but the pain began to fade. Kyle didn't move. He watched her with wide eyes. The woman looked up at him, meeting his gaze. Then she asked, "Why are you looking at me like that, human?" He didn't answer. He didn't know how. She stood and gestured for him to follow. When he didn't move, she came back and helped him up carefully. He leaned on her shoulder, still confused, still afraid. But there was no anger in her touch, only calm. They moved slowly through the valley. Kyle limped, and she supported him. With ease, they passed strange glowing stones and pools that shimmered like liquid stars. He had never seen anything like it. After a long walk, they reached a narrow path between two cliffs. The alien led him through, and suddenly they were inside a hidden cave. The walls glowed softly with blue and green lights. Plants grew from the stone. In one corner was a small pile of supplies and alien tools. She helped him sit on a soft mat, made of woven fibers. Then she sat across from him. "My name is Kyle," he said slowly. She looked at him for a moment, then said, "Alira." He nodded. "Alira, thank you." She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. They sat in silence. Kyle felt tired. His legs still ached, but it was better. He looked around the cave. It felt safe, even peaceful. He looked back at her. She was watching him again, studying his face, his clothes, his hands. "You helped me," he said. "Why?" Alira looked away for a moment, then said, "You are not like others." Kyle didn't know what that meant, but he didn't ask. Not yet. She stood and brought him a small dish with clear water. He drank slowly. Later, when he lay down to rest, he saw her, sitting near the entrance, staring up at the stars outside the cave. He wondered who she really was. Why she was alone. Why she spoke his language. He had 100 questions, but he was too tired to ask Dot as he closed his eyes. He heard her voice again. Why are you looking at me like that, human? He smiled, even though she couldn't see it. Because. He thought, you just saved my life, and I think you might be the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Kyle woke to the soft glow of the cave walls. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. Then he saw Alira sitting nearby, carefully sorting small pieces of shiny metal. She noticed he was awake and turned her violet eyes toward him. You? Rested well, she said softly. Kyle nodded, rubbing his leg. It felt stronger. He stood carefully and tested it. The pain was almost gone. Your medicine works fast, he said, surprised. Alira looked pleased. The plants here are good. They heal many things. Kyle walked slowly to where she sat and looked at the metal pieces. They were small, smooth, and unlike anything he had seen. What are these? He asked, picking one up. Parts of old machines, Alira explained. I use them to build things. Kyle examined the strange metal closely. It was light, but strong. As an engineer, he felt excited. You wanted to learn more. Can you show me? He asked quietly. Alira looked surprised but nodded. She led him deeper into the cave, where many strange devices lay scattered across a stone table. She picked up a small tool, its tip glowing softly. This helps me build and fix things, she said, holding it out to him. Kyle took it carefully. It felt warm and comforting in his hand. He turned it around, studying its shape. How do you use it? He asked. Alira moved closer and showed him how to activate the tool. As she taught him, Kyle saw her relax. She seemed to trust him more. As the hours passed, they worked together. Alira explained each device patiently, her voice gentle. Kyle quickly understood and even helped her fix a broken device that had confused her. You learn fast, she said, clearly impressed. Kyle smiled shyly. I like machines. They make sense to me. Alira looked thoughtful. My people like machines, too, but they don't like feelings. Kyle looked at her, confused. Feelings? What do you mean? Alira's eyes grew sad. On my world, emotions are weakness. We learn to hide them, to forget them. Kyle felt sorry for her. He couldn't imagine living without feelings. But you have feelings, he said softly. You helped me. You were kind. Alira looked down, uncertain. I am different. That is why they chased me away. Kyle reached out carefully and touched her hand. Being different is good. It means you care. Alira stared at their hands for a moment, then slowly smiled. It was the first time Kyle had seen her smile. It made him happy. That night, they sat near the cave entrance and talked under the bright moons. Kyle spoke about Earth, about his home, his family, and his dreams. Alira listened closely, her eyes wide with wonder. Your world sounds beautiful, she whispered. Kyle nodded. It is. But this place is beautiful too. I've never seen anything like it. Alira looked up at the stars. I used to look up and wish to escape. Now I feel safe here with you. Kyle felt warm inside. He never expected to hear those words. They sat in silence for a long time, simply enjoying each other's company. Early the next day, Kyle woke to strange noises outside the cave. Alira was already awake, tense and alert. What's happening? Kyle asked softly. Alira pressed a finger to her lips, signaling him to be quiet. Carefully, she moved to the cave entrance and peered outside. Kyle followed. Closely behind her. In the valley below, they saw a small group of alien drones flying low. They were searching the area, their sharp lights cutting through the shadows. Alira's eyes grew wide with fear. They found me, she whispered. They're hunting again. Kyle took her hand. We have to hide, he said firmly. Alira shook her head. They will find us. They always find what they seek. Kyle thought quickly. We can fight back. We can trick them. Alira looked doubtful, but Kyle felt determined. He knew machines. He could outsmart them. Do you trust me? He asked gently. Alira hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes, Kyle. I trust you. Working fast, Kyle used his tools and parts from the cave to build a small device. It would send out a strong signal to confuse the drones. Alira watched, hopeful and anxious. This will work, he promised. When the drones reached the cave, Kyle activated the device. Bright flashes of light and strange sounds filled the air. Confused, the drones spun wildly, crashing into each other. Soon they lay broken and silent on the ground. Alira stared in disbelief, then turned to Kyle with wide eyes. You did it. Kyle smiled warmly. We did it. Together. She moved closer, staring into his eyes. Why did you risk yourself for me? Kyle took a deep breath, then spoke from his heart. Because you saved me first, and because you matter to me. Alira's eyes shone with emotion. I matter to you? He nodded. Very much. Slowly, she reached out and took his hand. They stood there quietly, connected by trust and something new and wonderful. Later, as they sat together, Kyle knew their trouble wasn't over. More drones would come. Alira's people wouldn't stop easily, but he felt brave. He felt ready. Because now he wasn't alone. As the sun set over the alien valley, Kyle turned to Alira. We'll face whatever comes next. Together. Alira smiled gently, and her voice was strong when she answered. Together. And in that simple promise, Kyle felt hope. For the first time since coming to Verin 6. Kyle and Alira knew they couldn't stay in the cave much longer. The drones had found them once, and more would come soon. They spent the next few days quietly preparing, building small devices and gathering supplies. Kyle showed Alira new ways to combine her tools with his own knowledge, and together they created things neither could have made alone. You're teaching me many new things, Alira said one evening, smiling softly at Kyle. And you're teaching me too, Kyle replied warmly. He enjoyed seeing her face light up when she learned something new. He had never felt so useful or happy before, but deep inside, Kyle still worried. He knew Alira's people would return with stronger machines. He had to protect her, just as she had protected him. But he also knew they needed a better place to hide. He spent the nights thinking, planning, and hoping. Finally, Kyle had an idea. Alira, he said early one morning, is there somewhere else we can go? Somewhere safer? Alira paused, looking thoughtful. There is a hidden place, she said. Slowly, my ship. It is buried, hidden deep under the valley. But it has been silent for a long time. Can we fix it? Kyle asked eagerly. Maybe, Alira said, unsure. But it will be hard and dangerous. We have no choice, Kyle said firmly. We have to try. Alira nodded slowly. She trusted Kyle completely now. Then we must leave soon. They quickly gathered their things and left the cave quietly. They moved carefully through the valley, staying hidden behind large rocks and tall plants. The journey was slow, and Kyle could feel Alira's worry growing. He reached out and took her hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. It will be okay, he whispered. She smiled slightly, comforted by his words. Finally, after hours of travel, they reached a small clearing surrounded by tall cliffs. Alira knelt and pressed her hand against a smooth rock surface. There was a low hum, and suddenly the ground began to shake softly. A hidden door slowly appeared, sliding open to reveal a narrow passage. This way, Alira said softly. They stepped inside carefully. The passage was narrow and dark, but Alira knew the way. She led Kyle deeper underground, holding his hand tightly. After several minutes, the passage opened into a large room filled with ancient machines covered in dust. At the center was a sleek, beautiful ship. It was unlike anything Kyle had ever seen, its surface smooth and bright, even after years hidden underground. "It's amazing," Kyle breathed. Alira smiled proudly. "It was mine, my escape. But they found me before I could leave." Kyle touched the ship gently, feeling hopeful. "We can get it working again, together." Alira nodded bravely. "Yes, together." They began work immediately. Kyle's skills with machinery and Alira's deep knowledge of the ship made them a perfect team. Slowly, systems began to come alive. Lights blinked on, and gentle sounds filled the room. Days passed quickly as they worked, taking only short breaks for food and rest. They grew even closer, sharing stories about their worlds, their dreams, and their fears. Alira talked more openly about her past, about how she once stood up against cruelty and was banished because of her kindness. "They called me weak," Alira said softly one evening, sadness filling her voice. "You're not weak," Kyle said strongly. "You're brave. You stood for what's right. That's real strength." Alira smiled at him, her violet eyes filled with gratitude. "You believe in me. No one ever has before." "Always," Kyle said sincerely. "I will always believe in you." Finally, the day came when the ship was ready. Kyle and Alira stood proudly, looking at their work. Everything was fixed, and the ship hummed with quiet power. "We did it," Alira whispered, her eyes shining. Kyle felt proud and relieved. But he knew their journey was not over yet. Just then, alarms sounded from the ship. Alira quickly checked the monitors, her eyes widening in fear. "They're here," she said urgently. "My people have found us." Kyle's heart raced. "Can we escape?" Alira shook her head sadly. "If we run, they will follow. They won't stop until they catch us." Kyle took a deep breath, determination filling him. "Then we must confront them. We have to show them they're wrong." Alira looked unsure, afraid. They might not listen. Kyle reached out and gently held her face, meeting her eyes with confidence. "They will listen, because we will show them something they've never seen." "What's that?" Alira asked softly, staring deeply into his eyes. "Hope," Kyle answered quietly. "And love?" Alira smiled slowly, understanding his meaning. "Together?" "Together," Kyle replied firmly. They quickly prepared the ship for their next move. Kyle activated the communication systems, readying a message of peace and understanding. Alira stood by his side, brave and calm, believing in their plan. Outside, the ground shook as ships landed above them. They heard footsteps and voices growing closer. Kyle took a deep breath and activated the message. "My name is Kyle Carter," he said strongly into the microphone. "I am from Earth. Alira has taught me kindness, courage, and strength. These are not weaknesses. They make us strong. She is not your enemy. She is your hope." The cave fell silent as his words echoed clearly. Then slowly, the footsteps stopped. Voices whispered in confusion. Alira stepped forward, speaking firmly. "Hear me now. We can live differently. We can be better. We don't have to hide our hearts." For a long moment, there was silence. Then a single voice answered softly, uncertainly. "Show us." Kyle looked at Alira, hope shining in his eyes. They stepped out together, facing her people bravely. He reached for her hand, holding it tightly. Alira looked at Kyle, grateful and strong, and whispered softly, "Thank you." Kyle smiled gently. "You taught me first." And together, they walked forward to begin something new, something beautiful, something built on understanding and trust. Kyle and Alira stepped forward, facing the alien group waiting quietly outside the hidden cave. Kyle saw their eyes, filled with confusion and curiosity. He held Alira's hand tighter, letting her know she wasn't alone. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "You chased me away because I showed kindness," she said calmly. her voice strong and clear. But kindness is not weakness. It is strength. One of the aliens, taller and older, stepped forward. His eyes were cold, and his voice was sharp. We protect our world by hiding our emotions. Emotions cause pain, mistakes, and chaos. Kyle spoke next, softly but firmly. Without emotions, you lose compassion. Without compassion, you lose your ability to connect, to learn, and to grow. The alien turned his gaze to Kyle. You are human. You know nothing of our ways. Kyle nodded calmly. You're right. But I do know Alira. She saved my life because of compassion, not weakness. She showed strength by caring for a stranger. The aliens whispered among themselves. Some looked uncertain. Others looked angry. Alira stepped closer to Kyle, her violet eyes steady. Look around you, she said, pointing to the broken drones nearby. Your machines attacked us without reason, without understanding. They followed orders without question. But look at us. We worked together, learned from each other, and survived because we felt something deeper than logic. The leader hesitated, looking at the remains of the drones. Then he turned back to Alira. If we change, if we accept emotions, our society might crumble. Kyle shook his head. No, it won't. Your people are strong. You can learn to balance logic and feeling. The alien leader considered his words carefully, still unsure. Suddenly, a younger alien stepped forward from the crowd. Alira speaks the truth. We have lost something important by denying our feelings. More murmurs rose among the group. Kyle and Alira watched as others began stepping forward, agreeing with the young alien's words. This will not be easy, the leader warned, looking deeply into Alira's eyes. Nothing good ever is, Alira answered softly. After a moment of silence, the leader nodded slowly. We will try. Kyle smiled, feeling relief fill his heart. Alira squeezed his hand gently, sharing his joy. Over the next days, Kyle and Alira worked closely with her people. They showed them simple kindnesses, taught them patience, and helped them express emotions they hidden for so long. Slowly, change began to take hold. Her people felt stronger, happier, and more connected. Kyle spent time teaching them basic human ideas, like friendship, loyalty, and trust. The aliens began to respect him, and he found friends among them. Each evening, Alira and Kyle walked together under the bright moons, feeling hopeful for the future. One night, as they rested on a hill overlooking the valley, Alira turned to Kyle. None of this would have happened without you. Kyle shook his head gently. No, it was your courage. You stood up first. She smiled softly. You gave me strength. Kyle looked into her violet eyes, his heart beating faster. And you gave me hope. They sat quietly, looking up at the stars. For the first time, Kyle felt truly at peace. But deep down, he knew he would soon face another difficult choice. He belonged on Earth with his own people, but his heart wanted to stay here with Alira. What will you do now? Alira asked quietly, sensing his thoughts. Kyle sighed softly. My crew thinks I'm dead. My home feels far away now. You miss Earth, Alira said gently. Yes, Kyle admitted, but I would miss you more. She smiled warmly, leaning closer. Then stay. Help us build something new. Kyle felt warmth fill him. I want to, Alira, more than anything. In the days that followed, Kyle became deeply involved in helping Alira's people create a new way of living. Together, they built homes, developed new technologies, and discovered a balance between logic and emotion. Every day, Kyle found more reasons to stay. One afternoon, a signal came through on Kyle's repair communication device. It was his crew still searching for him. Kyle, if you're alive, respond, came the voice of his captain. Kyle hesitated, looking around at the community he and Alira had helped build. His heart felt torn. Alira stood quietly beside him, watching closely. You must answer, she said softly. Kyle nodded slowly and spoke clearly into the communicator. I'm alive. I'm safe. I found friends here. His crew responded quickly, relief clear in their voices. We'll send a ship to get you immediately. Kyle took a deep breath, knowing he had to make his choice now. He looked at Alira, her eyes gentle and understanding. I can't leave, Kyle finally said into the device. I've found something important here. The voice hesitated before answering, Are you sure, Kyle? Yes, Kyle said firmly. This is my choice. The device fell silent. Kyle turned to Alira, feeling calm and sure. My home is here with you. Alira smiled, relief clear in her eyes. I hoped you'd say that. They walked together, hand in hand, back into the village. The aliens greeted them warmly, sensing something important had happened. Kyle felt truly happy. He had found his place, his purpose, and someone he deeply cared for. As night fell, he and Alira stood together once again, watching the stars. I never thought I'd belong here, Kyle whispered. You do, Alira replied gently. You always did. Kyle looked deeply into her eyes. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for showing me a new way, Alira said warmly. Together, they stood under the bright moons, ready to face whatever the future would bring. They had shown her people how to embrace change, and in return, they had found something precious themselves. We will build something beautiful, Kyle said softly. Yes, Alira whispered, smiling gently. Together. And Kyle knew, with deep certainty, that they would. Kyle felt a deep peace as days turned into weeks. He spent most of his time working alongside Alira and her people, learning more about their ways and teaching them human ideas. Together, they built a new society based on trust, kindness, and balance. One bright morning, Kyle was helping some younger aliens build a water system. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze moved through the valley. Alira approached quietly, watching him for a moment with a gentle smile before speaking. Kyle, she said softly, come with me. There's something I want to show you. Kyle stood, wiping sweat from his forehead and smiling. Of course, he replied warmly. Alira led him away from the village, up a narrow path that climbed high above the valley. Kyle followed, curious but trusting her completely. They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a wide plateau overlooking the land below. Kyle caught his breath. It's beautiful, he said softly, staring out at the bright green valley and the shining river winding through it. This was my favorite place, Alira said gently, sitting down on a large rock. Kyle joined her, sitting close enough to feel her warmth. Why did you bring me here? He asked softly. She looked out over the valley, her violet eyes deep in thought. Because today is important. It marks the day I was banished. I used to come here alone, wishing things had been different. Kyle looked at her, concerned. Are you sad today? She turned to him and smiled gently. No, not anymore. Now this day feels different because of you. You showed me that I wasn't wrong, that kindness and compassion can build something strong. Kyle felt deeply touched. He reached out, taking her hand gently. You were always strong, Alira. You never needed me to show you that. Maybe, she replied softly. But you gave me hope. When I had none, you showed me that I wasn't alone. They sat quietly, watching as the sun rose higher in the sky, feeling deeply connected. Finally, Alira spoke again, quietly but with determination. There's something else, Kyle. Something important. Kyle looked at her closely, sensing the seriousness in her voice. Tell me. My people have been speaking, Alira explained carefully. They want you to become part of our council. They want your voice to guide them. Kyle stared at her in surprise. Me? But I'm human, Alira smiled warmly. They don't see that anymore. They see your heart, your wisdom. You've taught us much. Kyle thought carefully for a moment. He had never imagined leading others, especially a people so different from his own. But as he looked out over the valley, he realized he already felt a deep sense of responsibility and connection here. Do you think I can do it? He asked quietly. Alira squeezed his hand gently, meeting his eyes with warmth and confidence. I believe in you, Kyle. more than anyone I've ever known. He nodded slowly, feeling steady and strong. Then yes, I'll do it. Alira's smile widened, and her eyes shone brightly. She hugged him tightly, and Kyle felt warmth fill his heart. He knew he had made the right choice. In the following days, Kyle learned much about leadership. He listened carefully to the concerns and ideas of Alira's people, offering thoughtful suggestions and solutions. They respected him deeply, and he soon felt confident in his new role. One evening, after a long day of work, Kyle and Alira walked together through the quiet village. Stars filled the sky, and gentle sounds of the night surrounded them. Alira paused, turning to Kyle with a thoughtful expression. "Are you happy here?" she asked softly. Kyle smiled warmly, nodding sincerely. "Happier than I've ever been." "I worry sometimes," Alira admitted gently, "that you might miss your home." Kyle took a deep breath, thinking carefully. "I do miss it sometimes," he said truthfully, "but my life here is important. It's meaningful, and you make me happy." Alira's eyes softened, and she stepped closer to him. "You make me happy too, Kyle." They stood together quietly, enjoying the peaceful night, feeling the strength of their bond growing deeper. Days passed quickly, and Kyle continued helping to shape the future of the new community. Alira remained by his side, supporting him in every decision. Together they watched as their world became stronger, happier, and filled with hope. One bright afternoon, Kyle was working with a group of young aliens when he noticed something unusual in the sky. A ship, sleek and shining, was descending slowly toward the village. Alira ran to his side, her face filled with worry. "They found us again?" Kyle shook his head slowly, studying the approaching ship. "No, it looks different." The ship landed gently nearby, and the door opened slowly. Kyle's heart raced as he saw a human figure stepping out. It was his captain from Earth. "Kyle," the captain said with relief, approaching cautiously. "We came to check on you." Kyle stepped forward, feeling a mix of joy and confusion. "Captain, why are you here?" "We had to see," the captain explained gently. "Your message was strong, but we wanted to make sure you were truly happy." Kyle smiled warmly. "I am, Captain. More than I ever thought possible." The captain nodded thoughtfully, looking around at the peaceful community. "I see that now. You've done something amazing here." Kyle looked at Alira, feeling proud and thankful. "Not just me. Alira helped me see what was possible." The captain smiled warmly, nodding respectfully to Alira. "You've both taught each other something valuable." Kyle felt relief fill him. "Captain, please tell my family I'm safe and happy." "Tell them I found my place." The captain nodded sincerely. "I will, Kyle, and I'll tell them you're making a difference here." As the ship prepared to leave, Kyle felt a deep sense of peace. He had made his choice, and he knew it was right. Alira stood close to him, her violet eyes filled with understanding. "You're sure?" she asked softly, watching the ship lift gently into the sky. Kyle turned to her, taking her hand tightly. "I'm certain. My home is here with you." Alira smiled brightly, leaning into him gently. "Then we'll keep building something beautiful." Together, they watched the ship disappear into the sky, knowing their journey had just begun. They had faced challenges, fears, and doubts, but through it all, they had found something precious, a bond stronger than any they had ever known. And Kyle knew deep in his heart he had truly found where he belonged. Kyle and Alira continued their peaceful work in the village. Months passed, and the village became a place of joy and harmony. Together, humans and aliens learned to live as one community, supporting and caring for each other. Kyle felt deeply satisfied, knowing he had helped build something special. But one clear morning, everything changed. The peaceful sky darkened as several sleek ships descended quickly from above. Alira's eyes widened in alarm as she recognized the ships instantly. "It's the High Council," she whispered, her voice tense. "They've come back." Kyle moved closer to her, sensing her fear. He took her hand firmly, giving her strength. "We will face them together," he assured her. The ships landed gently, and a group of aliens stepped out. They wore long, flowing robes and had stern faces. Kyle could feel the villagers' nervousness rising. The leader stepped forward, his eyes cold and sharp. "Alira, you have broken our laws. You continue to lead our people away from tradition." Alira stood tall, meeting his gaze without fear. "We have found a better way, a way of compassion and understanding." The council leader shook his head slowly. "You have forgotten the reasons for our rules. Emotions lead to chaos. You must return with us for judgment." Kyle stepped forward, facing the council directly. "No," he said calmly but firmly. "Alira is a leader here. She has built something wonderful, something you refuse to see." The council leader looked closely at Kyle. "You are human. You have no place here." Kyle spoke clearly, his voice steady. "I belong here. My heart and life are here. Alira has taught me that feelings are our greatest strength, not weakness." The leader considered his words carefully, still unmoved. "You must prove this truth." Kyle felt a surge of determination. "Then watch us. Stay and see for yourself." Surprisingly, the council agreed to stay briefly. They watched closely as Kyle and Alira continued their daily routines. The council saw how the villagers treated each other with kindness and respect. They saw how disputes were solved calmly, with empathy and care. One evening, the council leader approached Kyle quietly. "Why do your ways work here? Why don't your emotions destroy you as they have our ancestors?" Kyle considered his words carefully. "Because we balance them. Emotions can guide us, but reason helps us choose the right path." The leader listened closely, slowly understanding Kyle's point. "You believe we can find balance too?" "Yes," Kyle said with confidence. "You can. Alira has shown it is possible." The council spent several days observing the village closely. They spoke with villagers, asking questions, and learning about the new ways Alira and Kyle had introduced. Slowly, their stern faces softened. They began to understand, but just as hope began to rise, another alarm sounded. This time, the ships descending were clearly aggressive. Their dark, sharp shapes filled everyone with fear. "Rebels," the council leader said, concern in his eyes. "They refuse to change. They want to end your new ways." Kyle looked quickly at Alira, sensing danger. "We have to protect the village." "We can defend ourselves," Alira agreed bravely. "But we must try to avoid violence." Kyle quickly gathered villagers, instructing them calmly on what to do. They worked swiftly, creating barriers and defenses. Alira's people trusted Kyle completely, following his directions without hesitation. Soon, the rebel ships landed and angry voices shouted loudly. A large group of aliens approached, clearly hostile and ready to fight. Their leader stepped forward, eyes blazing. "You betray our traditions," he shouted angrily at Alira. "You must pay." Alira stepped forward calmly, her voice clear and strong. "We have built something new here, something better. It is you who refuse to see the truth." The rebel leader raised his hand, signaling his group to attack. But just as they moved forward, Kyle stepped between them. "Wait!" he shouted strongly. "Before you fight, look around. Look at what we have built here." The rebels hesitated, looking closely at the peaceful village and its people. Kyle spoke again, his voice firm but gentle. "Your ways lead to anger and fear. Our way leads to peace and understanding." The rebels looked unsure, glancing nervously at their leader. Alira stepped beside Kyle, speaking firmly. "It is never too late to choose a different path. You can join us. You can build something better." The rebels murmured softly, clearly moved by Alira's words. Slowly, some began stepping back, lowering their weapons, but their leader remained angry. He stepped forward again, eyes filled with hate. "You are weak." "No," Kyle replied steadily, meeting his eyes without fear. Strength comes from compassion, not anger. True strength is the courage to change. The rebel leader stared deeply into Kyle's eyes, seeing sincerity and strength he had never known. Slowly, his anger began to fade. Can it really be true? The rebel leader asked, his voice shaking slightly. Can we live differently? Yes, Alira said warmly, stepping forward gently. We can teach you. The rebel leader nodded slowly, looking around again. For the first time, he saw clearly. He turned to his followers and spoke quietly. Maybe we have been wrong. Maybe we must learn a new way. The rebels slowly joined the villagers, putting down their weapons. Kyle felt relief and joy. They had faced danger but had chosen peace. Together, humans and aliens welcomed the rebels. Showing kindness and understanding. Late that night, Kyle and Alira stood quietly together, looking at the peaceful village under the stars. Kyle took Alira's hand gently, feeling deeply thankful. We did it, Alira said softly, smiling gently. Yes, Kyle agreed warmly. Together. They knew challenges would still come, but they were ready. Their bond was strong, their community united. They had shown everyone that kindness and compassion were powerful and true strength came from the heart. And as they stood together, under the bright moons, Kyle knew with deep certainty that he had truly found his home.